Well, the stream is live, again, streaming on the right channel. So, Matt, I think it should be one of our jobs to always specifically check, to be watching and monitoring our other YouTube channels to check that I haven't accidentally spammed like a motorsport channel or like, I don't know, one of these days, I'm going to just accidentally crash, I don't know, the NHS YouTube channel.
We accidentally put it out over the BBC TV.
Oh my gosh.
Sorry.
Well, do you know what? That is a real genuine risk because I'm sure I'm not revealing any secrets to say that radio stations around the world are setting people up to be able to transmit from home should they need to. So I have the software to transmit on the BBC as long as, someone at the other end is there to do the kind of handshake. So that is a fear that would be running. And then all of a sudden I would start, because it's
I'm
the
delighted. I found a new thing for you to be really worried about when we do this show.
Yeah, it's good because I don't have crippling anxiety before a broadcast anyway. So that's all good.
Is it how MIT researchers are thinking that 6 feet really is supposed to be 27 feet?
Fantastic.
Cool. Yeah, you can put your Yeti up a tiny bit again, Dakota, and then we'll get going now. Hi, guys. Thanks for joining us on the live stream. You're about to see my face. There it is. So that's the sound is good. We're on the right channel. You can see my face. I did a fizzy soda drink burp and remembered to mute it. In the olden days, I used to do all my throat clearing. I'd be like, just happily on the live stream. And you want to do like a little warm up and you want to be like, and do all that kind of stuff. And I would never mute it. And I'd be always concentrating on this bit, on the visual. And I would not see the live chat of people going, dude, we do not want to hear you like snorting and stuff. So here we go. Let's do the show. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Remain Indoors podcast, where we'll be looking at some lighter news from around the internet, having a grumble when required, and talking about the ways we're keeping ourselves entertained at home. Remain indoors. We'll also bring you some interesting people from our radio and podcast community to bring you their special skill sets and their interests, and so that you don't just have to listen to me and Matt two rumpets all the time, Matt. You need some salad with the meat that is you and me. Are we the meat or are we the salad?
I'm incredibly afraid of where this analogy might go momentarily, so I'm just going to bypass it entirely.
Well, you were just telling me a story that's not appropriate for the stream, but I'm going to make you tell it anyway, because we were talking about exercise and a compliment that you got while you were running around the streets of New York.
Yeah, back in the days when I was a competitive cyclist and had massive thighs and wore lots of Lycra, I was rocking down Central Park West. And at a traffic light, which I had stopped for, a car with two women pulled up next to me, and one of them leaned out and said to me, and I quote, "USDA grade A meat, baby."
Grade A meat. And did you feel upset and degraded?
I was just, no, I was just mostly like astonished, really. And then I was like, well, okay, well, I think of all my possible choices, I will take that as a compliment.
And then you immediately go back and tell your wife. Anytime I've been out in the wild and got even the smidgest, tiniest bit of a compliment from a woman, I'm straight home and I tell my wife, and I'm like, wife, you need to keep your eye on me. You need to be super jealous and keep me happy because I could get snaffled up at any minute. And she's like, no. She knows where the power balance and the attractiveness balance in our relationship lies.
I have met your wife, and this is a strategy that is immediately going to fail.
She's never been jealous, though. But I think the problem is you marry somebody that much more attractive than you, and that is one of the unintended consequences, is you never get them being in any way jealous. And in fact, like, I'm pretty sure you could just email my wife and say, Spanners has been having an affair, we have evidence, and she'd be like, nah. Honestly, like, you could take a photo of me doing it, and she would go, nah, there's some explanation. It's fine. Matt, how are you doing with your fitness then, locked up in an apartment in New York? Are you still getting out, doing your runs and your bikes?
Yeah, still doing my runs. I have some at-home exercises that I do when the weather's bad, and then I get on my runs. But it's been complicated because we've been taking daily family walks
Yep. Are you
as well.
restricted to one walk, one outside like we are? No, we're only meant to do one outside excursion.
Yeah, no, we haven't been restricted to that, but they have closed down the playgrounds and the basketball courts and things like that here in New York because despite being asked politely, remarkably, New Yorkers just simply ignored that and kept on doing whatever they were doing.
We live out in the sticks, really, on the edge of a small town. So I've been struggling to get my runs in because the family walk takes up our allocated run. However, I'm having a very rare period of like no injuries, and I feel great. So I'm like, I've got to get active. So I've been taking the kids out for a run. My wife walks alongside her. We have treated her as the shelter queen that we need to protect whilst we do running in and around her.
That would be Vivi you're talking about?
No, so the wife is strolling along at a stroll pace, okay. and Vivi and Treeface are running alongside me.
Ah, okay.
And
but she's the shelter queen then?
No, wife is the shelter queen, right? Little Vivi is Raven, the fearsome warrior bodyguard, you see. So, and Treeface, the older boy, we've been calling him Scout, right? Which gives me an excuse to send him off on missions while Raven stays with me and she doesn't get annoyed that she's the little one and that she can't go off and do the extra bits. And then when she gets tired, I do a fireman's carry and then I get a bit of extra exercise as well. But we've been treating the scenarios like this is the Outlands and we're on a dangerous mission. And I was walking alongside, we came across a lady with her dog and I said to the kids, an Outlander with her vicious beast. And thankfully, the lady joined in and said, yeah, I'm going to get you, and so's my dog. And we all ran away. So that's how we're making our exercise fun. We're joined in the shed by a duo of extra Americans. I would say possibly too many Americans. Missed Apex F1 and podcast host as well of the book podcast called What's the Book You're Reading Called and Do You Like It? Nick Alexander, that's the name of the book podcast.
That's true. It's called What's It About Podcast, and it's with me and Dakota, who will be introduced shortly. And we haven't done that one in a long time, actually, but we need to get it back up and running because where else are we going to go?
Yes, Dakota Clements joins us all the way from Michigan.
No, I'm in Oregon now, but I'm happy to be here online with you.
I thought you said Michigan.
I live in Oregon now. I'm from Michigan.
Oh, I see. Okay, so I have no clue, really, about where you all live. So let's put you all on screen. Loads of Americans. Right. So, Matt, you are in Brooklyn, which is south of New York. You're in Seattle, Nick, which is where Meg Ryan lives.
She lived there in You've Got Mail?
Yeah,
that's what you mean.
In that one movie once. Yes. And so where is Oregon in relation to those two, Dakota?
I live in Portland, Oregon, which is south of Seattle, about 3 hours.
And then confusingly, your name is also Dakota, which is also a place in America.
Yes, it's two places in America.
Oh, okay. Oh, North Dakota and South Dakota. Right.
Yes.
This is West Dakota.
And I just feel compelled to correct the record. Brooklyn is actually not south of New York City. It's part of New York City.
Got it. I guess I just think of Manhattan. Whenever I think of New York, all I think of is Manhattan. But Nick, you've been getting out and about because you've got a cute little dog who sometimes interrupts our podcasts. How have you found getting out and about in the apocalypse?
Oh my goodness. So a funny story about walking the dog in the apocalypse. So my business is essential and we are still up and running, but I am trying to work from home sometimes just to spread out. And I've been getting frustrated with work for the general reasons and also because my work computer is incredibly slow when I am trying to log in on the VPN. But when I get really frustrated at work, sometimes the best thing to do is just to take a couple laps around the building, right? Cool off.
Yeah.
Well, I was getting really pissed working from home because my computer just wasn't wanting to do anything. And so I was like, I have to take a walk. And it was so funny, I don't normally ever work from home. I always like to go to the office and keep that separate. But I turn around and my dog is like doing the little tippy tap, happy dance, wagging her tail, like, hell yeah, we're going for a walk. And I'm like, oh no, this isn't good. If I'm not careful, when I get mad, the dog is going to get excited and we're going to get in this feedback loop that's probably not healthy.
So yeah, so every time your dog sees you're upset, he's like brilliant. So he'll start to like feast on your negative emotions, and then I guess the worst case scenario would be he starts like feeding on them, and he's like, no, I need to make the human unhappy. Perhaps if I bite him, he'll take me for a walk, and because he's sad.
Well, especially if you had a cat, this would be the case. The cat would be like, oh, when I push the thing off the shelf and it breaks, then he gets upset. Therefore, I get the thing I want.
Right. So obviously what they need is the cat dog dual pet team. So if there was a cat to like push the laptop off the desk, then the dog would get the walks, and then the dog would somehow pay the cat back later, right?
Yeah, but admit it, if the cat actually pushed your work laptop off the desk, would you be upset?
No, because that's the only way I'm going to get approval for a new laptop.
Dakota, your apocalypse situation, stop calling it the apocalypse, is somewhat different to ours. So me and Matt are holed up with children. Mine are small children. They're terrible. They're much worse than Matt's children because they're tiny. They do poop on their own, so it could be worse. Nick is just having the life of Riley in with his lovely wife, which must be luxurious, in with your dog. You, however, are cohabiting, as young people do, with just a roommate. So you're stuck in the lockdown with a roommate.
Yeah, I am, and I'm very fortunate in that he is my best friend. We've lived together for the majority of the time that we've known each other, so it's actually like worked out pretty well. And I'm not just saying that because he can probably overhear me in the next room. But no, it's actually it's pretty good. We know when to give each other space, and so we each do our work in separate rooms. I work here in my room with my dual monitor, work from home setup, and he sits in the living room and does his grad school stuff. And we have our own little world for the majority of the day, and then at the end of the day we come together, and it's like we weren't even in the same house, so it works out pretty well.
Oh, good. And obviously that is one of the things you considered when you were picking someone to share a flat with or a house with, that you went, oh, what if there is a global pandemic and we're the only humans each other get to see for a while?
Well, if that wasn't a question when you're searching for a new roommate, it's going to be a question on every application now. And every time you interview for a job in America land, at least, you're going to ask the employer, what did you do for your employees during the pandemic? I want to hear. I want to know what they did.
Actually, this is something that I've been wanting to tweet for a while, but it's one of those very kind of social justice warrior things, and I try not to do that on Twitter because I almost always instantly regret it. As soon as you put anything that's like political or an opinion on the world, you have to be prepared to be at your phone and deal with people telling you that you're a knobhead, and I've never quite had the energy to tweet what I'm about to say.
Spanners. Chris Stevens.
Explain.
Chris, no opinion, Stevens.
Oh, right, I see. Yeah, well, Chris has no opinions on our F1 podcast because he is a former journalist and now works in public relations. So I don't know, like if one driver got out of a race car and started just braying the rear wing off another car with a hammer, and you said to Chris Stevens, whose fault do you think that incident was? He'd come up with a very PR answer, like, well, they're all under stress, and what you have to understand. No, Chris, it's the dude who hit the other car with a hammer. It's definitely his fault. But he stays very neutral. I'm sort of similar with the politics. So even if a politician does something like outrageous and just like downright racist, hypocritical, or contradicts himself within a 3-week period, causing significant risk to human life, even if something like that happens, there's no point me in my position saying it. Someone else is going to make that point for me, so it's okay. And do I really want to be the focal point and a forum? Because that's what you are. If you've got a following on Twitter and you state an opinion like that, you're deciding to become a forum for then subsequent opinions. And that takes a lot of energy. But on to Nick's point, where you're going to ask your employer, what did you do for your employees during the apocalypse? My question to anyone with personal wealth, any millionaire out there, anybody who, is in that financial bracket where you have the power to do things right now, like feed vulnerable kids who normally rely on school dinners, to make sure that families or old people that don't have food have food. Like if you've got the financial clout to just make that happen and throw money at it, if you're in that financial bracket every question from every journalist after this lockdown to any wealthy person in that bracket should be, what did you do with your personal wealth to reduce the suffering of your fellow human beings? That needs to be any question. It doesn't matter. If you're a football manager, a football player, a businessman, that needs to be the first question you get asked at the beginning of every interview. Nick.
Well, first of all, obviously, we have to ask Jurgen Klopp first and foremost of all the football managers, because he's been famously going viral for just shooting down any questions that anybody asks about the coronavirus. Like, well, what are you asking a football manager
Yeah, no,
for?
he's
I don't
been
know.
good for
Ask
that,
an
yeah.
epidemiologist. But can't we just tax them? Do they? Anyway? Let's not go down that road.
Spanner's Bleeding Heart Ready, coming to you today on BBC Radio.
Well, I know, and that's it. And I'm going to you can email me, spannersready@gmail.com, or you can tweet me @spannersready. But, you know, people like to think that they're good people. Everyone assumes even, that they're good people. But when you have the chance to actually, you know, when you have to prove that, sometimes people are like, oh quietly, I'll stay to myself. But anyway, Matt, tell me about your windscreen wipers and get me off my soapbox. And this is why I don't do it, because now I feel wide open and the chat room are going to tell me I'm a knobhead.
Well, they do that regardless of what you... Oh, I probably shouldn't tell you that. Never mind. Windshield wipers. Yes, we're talking about windshield wipers. So all of you probably know, or at least those of you from the Formula One show probably know, that I have had a long-standing problem with my wife that dates back to the time I was going to go to a gig and I had a flat tire. And I went and I got the old jack out and got the wrench out and turn, snap. I snapped off a bolt trying to remove my wheel. I'm like, well, that's not good. And then I snapped off another bolt, and then I snapped off a third bolt. And at that point, I'm like, there's not enough bolts left for it to be a safe ride. So I had to take the train. It was a big thing because I was giving somebody a ride. And my wife, because of this incident, became convinced I was mechanically incapable of changing a tire on a car, which is like saying, oh, you can't tie your shoes at my age, as far as I'm concerned, because as a bike mechanic, I could strip a bike down to a bare frame, face all the surfaces, and put it back together and have it run again. So I'm not the handiest person in the world, but I'm not entirely without ability. And so the next time I changed a tire, it took me 15 minutes. And I came back in the door. This is when I discovered it. I came back in the door. She's like, wow, that didn't take you long at all. I'm like, what? Wait, are you doubting me? Fast forward to last week, and using the windscreen wipers, the rubber blades separated from the rest of the thing. I'm like, oh, great, have to change it. So you do what you do, get a little YouTube video. Okay, that's how this model car works. Go down. Doesn't work like the guy said. I'm like, okay, so maybe I don't push down. Maybe I pull up instead on the tab. I pull up and the tab just goes ping, snaps right off. I'm like, oh, great. Well, at least I can get the thing off now and have a look at it. Get it off, and I can't remove it. Like, it's stuck. It won't come out the way that windshield wipers normally come out. I've changed wipers on all the cars I've ever owned. Try to get it out. It won't come out. My wife says, let me see that. She goes, tick, tick, and it comes off. I'm like, how did you do that? She's like, I don't know.
Oh, no.
So now I have the real problem.
So now she
I
thinks...
didn't take it off. I don't know how it works.
And also she thinks you're an idiot. Nick?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know. I feel for Matt that his wife doesn't trust in his abilities, although it sounds like occasionally there's evidence to that. But I have the opposite problem. I am completely mechanically inept, and my wife doesn't remember that. And she'd be like, why didn't you do the thing? And I'm like, I don't know how to do that. So what? You're going to like pay somebody money to do that? And it's like, well, yes.
Yeah.
No, the answer is no.
I mean, I think I've bored people before, Matt, but my wife's family are very, very handy. Like they could literally, each of them could individually build a house from the ground up. They have all the skills required to do it. Her dad is a bit more of a cowboy, and my concern with him, like I would never let him work in my house, is because he doesn't know what he doesn't know. Because he's done electrics in his house with no electrical qualifications at all. And then he tells this really funny story about how, I never knew you were meant to do the electrics like down a straight line. This is how he talks. Down a straight line from the plug upwards so that you know where they are. So he was just doing it whatever, like the shortest path. So from the plug just across the room. And so then the next time that he needed to like hammer in a nail or something, he's got a really high risk of of hitting cables, which he has done. So he's told this story, oh yeah, I've hacked through cables in the wire. And I'm like, this is the problem. He knows enough to do it, but doesn't know enough to know what he doesn't know and the dangers.
I was just going to give Nick this succinct advice. If you're talking about hiring someone, there's two reasons. One, they have insurance. Two, no fires.
And if they get it wrong, they have to then, fix it. And my time, frankly, could be better spent doing my freelance work instead of doing a job it would take a qualified person 5 minutes to do. It would take me an hour to do, and I have to go to the store and get stuff. And I don't know, Dakota, are you a handyman?
No, I'm not. But I have the benefit of knowing that I'm not. So I'm with Nick, where I will just hire it out to everybody. But I also don't have a wife around to tell me that I don't know how to do all these things. I can just sort of live in this bliss where hopefully nothing breaks. And as soon as it does, I either just buy a new one or hire somebody out to fix it.
Right. And what are wives for if not to tell you, to remind you of your shortcomings? But there's nothing more satisfying than when somebody comes over to fix something and 10 minutes later they're like, all right, I'm done. And you're like, oh, you're already done. Like, oh, great.
I will happily tell you 5-6 days later, you finally figure out how to put the stupid windshield wiper back on. That's also satisfaction.
Oh man, I hate it when you're trying to get jobs done and maybe you just, for whatever reason, you can't figure it out, or you have a mental block, and then you look like an idiot. There was one time we had to get, this is the olden days, a coax cable. You might have to explain to the kids what a coax cable is, and we had to get it out into the garden for like a display or something. And I realized, it's got to go from the signal box upstairs. So I sent someone up to the top, and I'm sitting there for 8 trying to throw this cable up to the person to catch it, and they've missed it. And they go, okay, I got to throw it again. And no, they missed it. Oh, we're trying. And then someone just goes, why don't you just take the cable to the top and dangle it down? You go, oh God. Yeah, obviously. Once you say it, it's obvious. But I was just downstairs with the thing going, well, it needs to go up. I'll make it go up.
Oh, that's the worst when you get stuck in those loops. John McClintock in the chat says, maturity is recognizing the things that you're incompetent at and still doing them anyways.
Dakota.
Your story of the coax cable just reminded me, and also the story of the cables going every which way that my late father, would do, when the internet became available to everybody, wired our house himself. And the end result was coax cable and Ethernet cable going all over our house, through the walls, in the ceilings, that did not necessarily connect to anything. So when he died and it became time to clean up all these messes, we would just pull on these cables and they would just come out of the walls. And then the other end would come out and be like, all right, well, that didn't connect to anything. Let's grab the next cable and we'll just pull and we'll see what it's connected to.
Nick.
Yeah, speaking of when somebody points out something obvious and you are like, oh, well, yeah, of course. So I don't know if it's exactly the same in the UK, but here when you get a tube of toothpaste and you unscrew the lid, there's a little aluminum foil protective.
Yeah, we don't call it aluminum. We call it flabbergibbets. Yeah, that's the English word for it.
Outnumbered 3-1. So, if you've got big man hands and you're trying to get the little aluminum foil off, it can be hard to get your fingers to pinch quite so small to get that. Well, there is a little pokey bit on the end of the cap that if you flip it around, you can puncture.
No.
Yeah, and Dakota's nodding his head like he's known this his entire life, and I found out last week.
No, I have found out 3 seconds ago is that a thing? I honestly want to stop recording now and go up and check because I've just opened a new toothpaste this morning, and again, he's sitting there going, and I don't have big sausage fingers like you, Nick, but I'm sitting there, doing that. Right.
Yeah. I went and immediately checked when I saw the BuzzFeed article or whatever I was reading, because that's how bored I was. I was like, okay, fine. I'll read the 25 common household items you didn't know do the thing article. I immediately went and looked at my toothpaste tube and flipped it around. And because it's all injection molded plastic, it's all the same color and it's subtle, but it's there. Go have a look.
Welcome to Remain Indoors podcast. Matt referenced a chat room there. That's not in our minds. We haven't imagined it. People are joining us live as we record this and have a chat, we release it as a podcast as well. But you can see us on video by going to YouTube and searching for Remain Indoors. The link is at a handy website called on missedapexpodcast.com. That's our F1 website. missedapexpodcast.com/Remain Indoors. And then you'll find the links and how to subscribe and everything. Hello to the chat room. Connor, Mark, Rob, Sam, Martin, Sam H, Nick, that's you, Nick, that's you. Summers is there as well from our F1 show. Dick, thank you for joining us. You can watch the video on your phone and then have the chat room in the bottom half, so you can let us know your opinions. We are, of course, a new enterprise, and everybody so far who has got in touch, no one has got in touch and said, why are you doing Remain Indoors, you weirdo? It's absolute garbage. Please stop. It's all been quite positive. So help us spread the word so that this can be a thing that persists and that we can justify doing even when we're not forced to be at home as much as we are at the moment. 3 days a week of afternoon radio style content, talk radio, has been something me and Matt have wanted to do for a long time. So this is making us happy, and hopefully it's keeping you occupied. You can do us one big favor. Go and write an iTunes review for us. We are up on iTunes now, so just search for Remain Indoors in there. Right, 5 stars, please, but the comment can be as oddly, strangely insulting as you want. But 5 stars would be amazing. Thank you very much for that. Let's talk to our guests. We've got Dakota joining us all the way from, I've forgotten, America. It doesn't matter. It's far away. I'm surrounded by Americans. And you have the fascinating job of, checks notes, IP law, intellectual property law. So are you a lawyer, man?
No, I'm a legal assistant. So I do the stuff that not only a lawyer doesn't want to do, but that a paralegal also doesn't want to do. Then I do it.
Oh, wow. So you've painted like quite a derogatory picture there. But I believe that in the UK, you would still be referred to as a lawyer. I think anyone who works in the law to that degree. But IP law is something that is tripping loads of people up. So this is intellectual property law, correct? I've not made a really strange gaffe.
Patents and trademarks.
Okay, so patent and trademarks, does that also apply to music rights and things like that?
That would be like copyright, which I believe falls under a different set of rules and regulations.
So what kind of violators do you run into? Like, I know you're going to think this isn't interesting, but this is a world where content creators just fall down all the time. And as more and more people are trying to put out content and start new podcasts, please don't do that. They are suddenly breaking laws they didn't know existed.
Yeah. So primarily what I deal with would be people who go to a trade show, look at an invention, and then go home and make their own. So that type of like patent violation. And then you go to court and there's litigation and stuff like that. What a lot of podcasters would probably run into would be like trademark violations, like picking a name that's already been trademarked by somebody else. And, patents and trademarks are very expensive to get, and they're very valuable. So people defend them with a lot of lawyer power.
And again, I'm not a lawyer, but I listen to a lot of legal podcasts because that's how geeky I am.
Really?
And, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, so copyright and trademarks and that kind of stuff, at least in America land, is something that people need to know that is kind of use it or lose it. So if you have the rights to a certain type of content and people go out there and copy it, or they just like put it up and sample it, and you don't say anything and do anything, then it's kind of assumed that you don't care. And so it can be like too late to kind of come back and go after somebody, which is why the Disney Corporation will like sue an 8-year-old girl for putting a Donald Duck drawing on YouTube, because if they don't enforce the rights, then unfortunately they won't get to keep them.
That's true of patents too. You have to pay fees every year, and if you don't pay the fee, then they go, well, then you don't have a patent anymore, and anybody can steal your invention.
Right. Mark Greenhow asked a very interesting question about copyrights and patents, like the type of company that can rapidly reverse engineer a CPAPs machine or a ventilator. Like, how is that working? because presumably the design for these machines is owned by the companies that currently produce them, yet we're seeing open source efforts. And hey, I just happen to know some Formula One teams engineering new devices and similar devices so that they can rapidly make them.
Nick, do you want to just add to that before Dakota answers?
Well, I think I know the answer, and
Ooh.
I think it's that the makers of these ventilator machines are like giving up their patents and saying, "Here's the designs. People, please go make them," which companies sometimes do. So famously, Volvo never patented the 3-point seatbelt system because it was like, well, this is just way better for people not dying. So other car manufacturers just need to go ahead and do this too. So it's hard to imagine. I know, like, close your eyes and brainstorm with me, but sometimes people don't do things out of pure greed and they actually like do the thing for like the greater good. Sometimes.
Well, I'm finding this interesting, and the live stream numbers, which I'm watching like a hawk, by the way, because I'm like, we're talking about intellectual property law. No, they're not dropping, so we're good. Dakota.
Yeah, my guess would be that they are either selectively not enforcing those patents for the time being, or they could be licensing them. Or, it's possible that like Mercedes F1 team, for example, reverse engineers ventilator, but they improve it. Let's say they figure out a way to make it work better. Well, now you've invented a new product and you don't need to worry about that patent because you've invented a new thing.
Right. So it's too bad we don't also have Chris Stevens on the show, because this is like a PR thing as well. Imagine the optics of suing like a manufacturer who is like making ventilators with your specific mechanism to do the thing. It's a PR disaster.
Yeah, imagine if you're the guy that stops someone making ventilators right now. That would be terrible. But I'm sure, obviously, UK law and US law will vary somewhat. The principles will be similar. So I had an ex-girlfriend who worked for a large supermarket chain that went into non-foods, like clothes and stuff. And her job was to take the designs of, say, I don't know, someone name me a famous clothes designer, Tommy Hilfiger, take those jeans, and then legally they would have to make 7 distinct design changes so it would be different enough. And that could just be 3 lines of stitching instead of 2 around the pockets, or a different shape pocket, and that would be 1 change. And once it was 7, they could make it and sell it. Nick?
Mark Greenhow is helpfully pointing out in the chat that they could choose a machine that was out of patent. So generally with a patent, my understanding is that you get like 20 years. Like you get the first 20 years of like making all the money on the fancy design, and then other people can latch on. So yeah, you could take a 30-year-old ventilator design and it would still be good enough for, pandemic purposes.
Well, there you go. Do you get a lot of people, Dakota, interrogating you about the finer details of intellectual property law?
Only when I'm at work, typically, and it's usually clients who have no idea how to get a patent. Sometimes people will send an email and just be like, I've invented a thing, please get me a patent.
Right, and that's not how it works, presumably.
No, it takes months, and it takes thousands of dollars, and it takes time and arguments. And they're just like, yes, I would like 1 patent to go, please.
So when you're on a Tinder date or some such thing, and they say, so Dakota, tell me tell me about yourself. What do you do? And you say, well, I'm in law and I work on intellectual property rights. What is the face generally that the person on the other side of the table makes?
Usually just like a huh, okay.
Are they
so what does that mean? And then I usually have to go into how it's mostly client correspondence. I mostly am just sending emails to clients.
Well, what kind of response do you want? How would you feel if you were out on a date and you said that you worked in IP law and she got like all excited? It was like, oh my God, like that's my favorite topic.
Well, that's why I don't. Typically, I will say that I'm a poet instead.
Do you do? Oh my gosh. I mean, I have lied about my trade in the past when I had a job that would put nice girls off and maybe not put off the not so nice girls. That's a subtle way to put it. We used to lie all the time. That me and the lads, we used to say that we were dolphin trainers when we were out and about, rather than say what we did for a living. And my best man used to tell girls that he was an underwater wood welder, and that was his line. and he would stick with it. And if anyone ever interrogated him, he had a full backstory of the chemicals and how the heating process removes the water from the area temporarily while you're applying the heat, and then you can then melt the wood and it can come together, and that he goes around fixing like piers and stuff.
Well, I mean, that sounds wrong to me, but I don't know enough about underwater welding to dispute it.
Exactly, especially like, on a night out in Newcastle, you're not going to sit there and go, hang on a minute, that doesn't sound chemically feasible. Matt, is it the naughty chat room putting you off again?
No. I was just laughing at the concept that anyone would fall for that. But then I realized it also works as sort of kind of a test, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's also a bit of a wake-up call when you realize that that your lifestyle means that you would not be attracted to anybody who would, in their right mind, be attracted to you. So yeah, that I moved on shortly afterwards. That was one of the deciding factors. Guys, we're all doing more stuff online, spending more time with our partners at home, and the video conferencing world is really a rich source of amusement at the moment, especially to my boy. He started using my Zoom account to call his friends, and I thought, what is the harm? What's the harm of letting him call his mates on a Zoom account? I'll set him up, we'll dial him in, his friends answered, I left them to it. Now, being 9-year-old boys, the first thing they did was like, what settings can we change on the Zoom call? They were mucking about making each other hosts, playing with all the hands up features, and he changed my username to Mr. Poop. Now, bear in mind that this is the Zoom account I used to call people for Missed Apex, for F1 podcasts, and for BBC interviews that I'm doing online at the moment. So you'll get a call to go and join Mr. Poop.
What's the problem? It says Mr. I mean, that is
at least
formal and professional.
At least he's been formal, yeah. And if they call me Poop, I'm like, no, that is Mr. Poop. That is Mr. Poop to you.
It's Pope.
It's Poep. Poep. God, you're so misinformed. But loads of people are getting annoyed at their partners for their habits. For example, Nick, you were telling me about your partner's video conferences.
Oh. Well, she might be able to hear me right now.
Risk
so
it.
Put me
Risk
on
it.
the spot. Okay. So I will say that in general, all these people that are video conferencing now, no one knows how to do it. No one has the slightest, the foggiest, I believe you Brits would say. No one wears headphones. So you'll have 6 people all on a Skype call with no headphones, and it's just all this echo, and everyone's like, what? And it's like, they no idea. And I don't know why I'm surprised, because every time I get on a work conference call, there's always one person, and the company I worked at previously, it was always the same person who wouldn't wear headphones. And it's like,
yeah,
you in particular, you're causing an echo. And they're like, no, it's not. It's somebody else. And it's like, well, there's only 2 of us on the call, and it is not me. Therefore, it is, in fact, you who is causing the echo.
It's not a surprise, really, that people are struggling. Like Matt and I mean, we struggle. We do this all the time. And we often struggle getting a decent sound just between us two. But then we introduce someone new who is perhaps an expert, but not a YouTuber or a podcaster, and trying to get reasonable sound from them, it's a real hard balance. Like, what did you say to me before the show about, the stress caused from the setup?
Me?
Yeah, you made some comment of like, oh, it's a good job you're being like super chill and casual and not stressing out our guests with all the tech stuff.
You were playing the game of, well, this was the video, not the audio, but you're playing the game with Nick, like, oh, sorry, your head's cut off. Can you sit down? Yes. Oh, now you're too far from the mic. Can you move forward? Oh, now your head's cut off again. Can you sit down? And I was just making the point that that's a really great way to settle your guest before an interview.
I feel like the absolute best thing I could do at this time to improve the video of this production would be somehow to get from the black market a haircut. I would be willing to do unspeakable things and pay tidy sums to do something about all this.
On Missed Apex, someone even like typed in the chat room criticizing your hair, and I could tell it like stabbed deeply into your chest.
Yeah, once you brought it up on the air for all the audio listeners.
Oh yeah, I could have not done that, and you'd have been fine.
Can't your partner just cut your hair for you?
I don't. Maybe it would be risky. So the hair salon, which is closed by government order, had called and rescheduled my appointment for the 9th. So hopefully in a week, I will be able to get a haircut. But I already know that the shutdown will be very likely extended. And so I'm just going to take clippers. And it's just going to be 10 millimeters all over. And
It could be, or we could just all accept that we've all got a bit rubbish hair for a while. It's just, that's it. It's not going to look how you want it to. Mine's not. Look, I've got a big old Buffonti wave at the front. I don't want that.
You guys speak for yourself. I look great.
Our state attorney general, who was going on TV, going on press conferences, telling people stay at home or else there will be penalty of law and all that stuff. He has not had a haircut in quite a while, and it is wild. And I love it. I love that if the high powered government attorney is not getting a haircut, then it should be a little bit okay that I can't get one either.
On the other hand, my 8-year-old girl, who normally has restrictions at school of what they can do with their hair, is like, hang on a minute. I can do what I want. And she's like, I want blue fingernails and I want blue hair dye. And we're like, yeah, go for it.
And I bet you're happy because you can stop ironing school clothes.
So happy.
So the chat room is all over this. John McClintock says having your spouse cut your hair is a bit like doing your own plumbing and wiring at the same time.
Okay.
And Lucas Meyer says, I have life insurance and she's my beneficiary. She's not allowed to hold sharp things near my head.
And that's true.
Ha,
and also,
ha, ha. It was a joke, people. It was a joke. A joke.
I also find it ironic that someone who has that amount of beard, Nick, and doesn't mind looking like... I'm not going to say you look like a homeless person. I'm just saying that having a beard would make anyone look more like a homeless person than they otherwise would. So you've already made that choice.
I don't think my beard makes me look like a homeless person. I resent that. I get a lot of compliments on this beard, mostly from Missed Apex listeners, but
he's just.
I'm very jealous.
Yes. I've noticed that his fungus has disappeared again.
Yeah, no, it gets to a certain point, and I know that people are going to start asking me for drugs because they just are going to assume that I am a drug dealer.
Right. So part of the reason that I feel like I can do the beard is because I keep my hair short, and it's like, no, I'm not homeless. This is on purpose. This is all maintained. But as soon as my hair gets to go long and I'm weeks behind on my haircut, then the beard is at risk of being axed.
But VCs, Matt, we have struggled over the years with new people, and it takes people a while. And now suddenly everybody is having to be an online communicator, and there's a skill curve, there's a learning curve, and people aren't willing to take it. And like Nick said with his person with the headphones, what I found this with people all the time. I find it really hard to convince people that if we're doing a video interview, you need headphones. Otherwise, it all just feeds back into the mic, and there's a big echo, and then they get upset when they're like, can you please wear some headphones? It really will make a difference to the sound. And they're like, oh, I've had this loads. I don't have any. And people will straight up to my face on the thing, they'll go, I don't have any. And I'm like, okay, in 2020, and you're a family man, I refuse to believe that not you, your children, your wife has no need for some headphones. What you're saying is, you're putting a barrier in front of getting the headphones to see if I really care. So then I have to push that little bit more and go, no, come on, there must be some somewhere. And then they can do the whole, oh, hang on. Oh, actually, yeah, maybe I can find a thing. But people are upset that you are trying to get them to improve the audio or video quality because from their point of view, they sound fine. When you're sat there in your living room shouting at a screen, you sound fine. So everyone yelling at you that you don't sound fine is maddening.
Yeah, Summers Gaming would like to chuck in and no Wi-Fi and an Ethernet cable to the list of things you must absolutely have. And I will tell you he knows that from personal experience.
So Summers is our tech expert on F1, on our F1 show. And we have had many adventures with Summers. For example, we were trying to get rid of the echoey sound from him for a long time before we realized that he was talking into the wrong end of his microphone. It was a side address, and he was trying to talk into the top of it like a singer's mic.
Yes, one of many. Although I still think my favorite story from those days is when I was first mixing my own show and came to the realization, thanks to the chat room, that muting yourself on the call when you're recording the show doesn't mean that you're muting yourself on the show itself.
On the recording. Yeah. So you were
Got
like,
many emails because I was drinking beer that day.
so they can hear you pouring the beer, sniffing, yelling at the kids.
Yeah.
I mean, I had
all of it.
a podcast the other day where my kids didn't realize I was recording, and they beautifully brought me a muffin, which was great. But I was like, oh, what do I do? So I just muted myself and went and got it. But in your situation, they would have heard me going, kids, I'm recording a show on the internet that there's literally some people tuned in live to. But yeah, some tips would be useful, I thought, as people who've been doing this a long time. Firstly, don't stick the camera up your nose. Like, we're even seeing it on mainstream TV at the moment, that there's, everyone who speaks to people, Nick, you can get a real good shot of whether they've waxed their nose hairs lately.
Right. And which is a favorite topic of discussion on Missed Apex, or it was for a little while, where
Yes.
people thought that we were sponsored by nose trimmers.
Yeah, nose waxing. I'm a nose waxer.
I cannot believe the lack of audio quality on cable news now, because you have people calling in from home, and presumably they don't have a techie person to tell them to do things. And I see people call into like major cable news, CNN, MSNBC, with one AirPod in as their headphones. And if you don't think that makes you look like, at best, a genie, at worst, a sheep, then I don't know what to tell you. It looks horrible. Please don't do that.
The ability to monitor what you're sending is a really big thing. So if you ever get one of those microphones where you can put a headphone out and then you can actually hear yourself back, that really affects how you talk and how you sound. But it's not hard just to prop your phone up in a position where you're not looking up your nose. And there's really simple things you can do on your VC to your company to make yourself not sound terrible, even with the internal laptop mic. Get nice and close to it. It sounds very different if you're far away than when you come in. And also, be in a room with some cushions. Be in a room that has a sofa in it, not your utility room.
Right. So just to add on to that a little bit, so what you're referring to, the ability to be able to listen to yourself when you're out shopping for stuff is called a monitor. So you want to be able to monitor yourself. And if you have questions about that kind of stuff, then feel free to hit me up on Twitter at Nick Alexander F1. And
Nice.
I am so happy to help people with like basic microphone stuff, because like it'll just make me feel better, not even being on that call, but knowing that somewhere there's a call that doesn't sound like garbage will just like help me sleep at night.
Trumpets.
Well, I think Dakota had something to say.
I was just going to add, the other etiquette thing that I've run into is not muting yourself when you're not speaking. So I was on a call yesterday with my team, and there was a lot of, like face scratching and sniffing and, like bordering on like ASMR level weird noises coming from people. And it's just like, no, just click the mute and then you're gone.
All good advice there. Matt, let's get some news in before we go. In fact, we should point out that it's ridiculously early in the morning for Nick and Dakota. So we'll find out their status in a moment. Matt.
Well, I was going to say, should we ask them if they're reading any books? I mean, they do a book podcast.
Oh, well, that was the whole reason we invited you on. Yeah, okay, we'll skip the news. I've got some really good news stories. In fact, let me do one because I know that Nick is a dog person, and I meant to say this when he was talking about his dog. This is from the Mirror, I think, but there was a video of a little dog who's not used to his humans being home all the time, and because his humans are now home all the time, he's had to go to get treatment because he has sprained his tail from excessive happy wagging. So he's been wagging his tail so much from being happy the people are there that he has actually sprained his tail.
Is the Mirror a British publication?
Yeah. Wow, sort of magazine / newspaper.
The fun fact for you, maybe people don't know, but Der Spiegel, the German newspaper, that means the Mirror.
Oh, so right. Yeah, I did not know that. Okay, good. Yes.
Maybe you were translating that.
You're a German speaker because I forget. Is your spouse a German?
No, I get this question all the time. I'm a German speaker for no particular reason, really. Have German ancestry, but no living relative German speakers. Started taking it in school, was really good at it, and went all the way through, studied abroad, got a major, work for a German company now.
Well, there we go. Well, in English, please, could
Yeah.
you possibly, you two, how many episodes of your book review podcast called Nick Reviews Some Books did you actually do before you had inevitable pod fade? Explain to me the pod fade process.
Right. So if you recall, so we haven't put out an episode in about a year now, which is it's a big milestone, I guess. But
Classic.
I still pay $20 a month to Spreaker to host it. So I haven't fully given up hope that we won't record something. We put out about 7 episodes, I believe, where 3 or 4 of us read a full novel and got together and did like one big book review episode, which in hindsight might have been just a lot of reading for people to do per episode. It might have been better to kind of spread it out, part 1, part 2, something like that, or maybe just have like 2 and 3 man shows,
or like TV shows,
like,
TV show reviews. They're super easy because you just watch the telly and then talk about it.
I don't know. I obviously I'm a kind of a podcast enthusiast. I get eye strain from looking in the computer all day working in Excel as an accountant, and so when I come home, I don't actually really like to watch a lot of television.
Fair enough,
because it'll hurt my eyes and give me a headache. So what I really love to do is like listen to podcasts, and I've been just devouring podcasts lately. I'm scraping the barrel. I'm listening to a show that I subscribe to that I haven't like followed up with them in half a year, and I've slowed down the playback speed that I'm listening to podcasts on, so I'm down all the way to like 1.0x on some. Like,
so you don't
I'm rationing my podcast. So I think we're doing a great service by creating the show and continuing to pump content out into the ether, because I think there's people, audiophiles like myself, who are like desperate, like, please, like,
well,
talk to me.
For the Bookophiles, I'm pretty sure that's what that's called. For the Bookophiles, what can you and Dakota do to hook us up with some book reading? Perhaps, Dakota, you could start with what you're reading at the moment and maybe even convince me to pick up a book.
Yeah, I have 2 book recommendations. The one, so that's for 2 sort of the opposite ends of the spectrum for how you might be feeling about being locked in your house. The first is not what I'm reading right now, but it's The Shining by Stephen King.
As long as my family, that is the wrong movie to show your kids right now. Put it that way, if you want to build a relationship up. But obviously, I've never read the book. I've seen the movie. Same kind of thing.
It's close.
Is it the wrong thing, or is it the right thing to keep them in line?
Warning, that's one way to look at it. Dakota.
The book, I think, is much better than the movie. I like the movie a lot, but the book goes much more into the psychology of the main character and how it changes and evolves and what devolves over the course of the book. And it's very interesting to track that. And I think Stephen King does a really good job of showing that mental decline. So that's my one recommendation for that end of the spectrum.
Okay, so that's a bit kind of horror. And if I take Nick's advice, I could start, show that to the kids and apply it to alcohol instead. So all teaching and no beer makes dad go crazy. Bring dad beer. Yeah, this could work. So I'm hoping the next recommendation is less horrifying.
Yes, my next recommendation is what I'm actually reading, which is a book called The Book of Delights by Ross Gay, who's actually a poet. He's my favorite poet, but he wrote a book of short essays cataloging really small delights that he could find throughout his day. And he's a very good writer. So it's fun to not only like remind yourself that there are good things in the world, but it's fun just to read his words because he's such a good writer.
And give me an example of a delight.
He has a really good short essay on nicknames and his favorite nicknames that he's received for himself and his favorite nicknames that he's proud of bestowing onto other people.
That sounds like something Spanners would love. I mean, he just loves to assign nicknames to people. I think that's the main driver for adding new panelists to his podcast is like, well, I get to give them a nickname. So got to expand that.
Obviously, my name's Richard. I go by Spanners for all my media and broadcast stuff. So that is a nickname. I did a whole radio feature for 2 hours about people's nicknames without ever once acknowledging that I had a nickname and was going by a nickname. Even when people messaged in asking where Spanners came from, I would just ignore that text. I thought it was funnier to go through the whole thing as if Spanners was like a Christian name and normal.
So technically, Nick has a nickname, but also a nickname, right?
Because it's Nick, yeah.
Right. No, it's numbers.
Numbers, because you're an accountant and I never ask you about your work. Notice how I had a really deep conversation with Dakota about IP law, but have not asked you about accounting ever.
I know. And to be below IP law on the ladder of interesting occupations is, it hurts. It hurts.
The thing is, though, right, all joking aside, you are an incredibly interesting man. I find you fascinating in real life. I find you fascinating on podcasts. You have a really like similar sense of humor to me. We have the same kind of things, the sense of like irony or like whatever. It's very similar, but our delivery is different. Whereas I'm more like a sat up puppy dog. Like you are so dry that you could be mistaken if people don't get your humor. I could mistake you for a very boring person.
Yeah. Oh, well, you were doing so well until the end there. But no, I think there's been times on the Missed Apex where there's been some deadpan humor that has just gone right over the heads of maybe non-Americans or even like non-native English speakers.
But
it can be harder to pick up on dry humor if it's not.
I don't mind a joke that doesn't sound like. I don't mind like a joke that nobody gets, or that like two people are sitting at home going, ah, and that's it. Like then, but I've noticed when I'm looking at people off screen that everybody's just sitting there, you know, just listening to what I'm saying, and then you will have the corner of your mouth go up, and I go, ah. Nick got that. No one else did. Right, book recommendations. Nick, are you? So what was that poetry book again called? And by the way, so impressed, Dakota, that you not only know about poetry, but you have a sufficiently high knowledge of poets to have a favorite. I don't think I could name one right now.
I recently counted. I have 100 books of poetry, over 60 of which I have not even read yet.
Okay, so you're not going to run out. Anyway, you're not going to run out of the poetry. What was the name of that poetry book?
The Book of Delights, and it's a book of short essays by a poet.
The Book of Delights. Nick, I guess yours is going to be like a post-apocalyptic wasteland book that you're going to recommend.
Yeah, so I did not coordinate this with Dakota, but I'm going to go in the same route. So I'm going to give you like a very serious, relevant book that I read probably about 2 years ago. If you want the horror stuff, and then I'll tell you what I'm reading right now, which is very much the opposite of that.
Sounds like a solid plan. Let's do it.
Okay. So the book that I read a few years ago that I absolutely could not put down, raved about it, told everyone, it was such a delight. And the reason that I picked the book was because I have an Amazon Prime subscription. And I don't know if it's still a thing, but for a while there, it was like they would email me every month and be like, you get a free Kindle book and you can pick from one of these like $5. And so I picked this one and it ended up being great. And it's always so much fun when
what is it?
Something. Oh, well, I'm building a suspense.
No, I can't take it anymore. I've got no patience.
Okay. Well, it's just so much fun when you just randomly pick a book or a movie or whatever, and it turns out to be great. That's my last comment. Okay. The book, the name, which is, it is called The Winter Over by Matthew Iden. It came out in 2017, and it follows the protagonist, one Cass Jennings, who is a 30-something mechanical engineer, and she goes to work at the South Pole in Antarctica. And it's called The Winter Over because you have to stay there throughout the Antarctic winter because the weather is so crazy that, you know, planes can't come in and out. So she has to get prepared to shelter in place for a long time. And she's a runner, and so she's living in the base, the research facility, if you will, and she's like running laps of the hallways, which is like driving people crazy and stuff like that. And anyways, so it's all like that kind of normal dealing with adjusting life in Antarctica stuff until someone mysteriously dies and somebody else and another person, and it gets into a whole like what or who done it kind of thing that will leave you flipping the page to the very end. Cannot recommend it enough.
That sounds like a book I would read. The Winter
Over.
The Winter Over. And your nice book? I like this.
So I am currently reading The One I Love to Hate by Amanda Weaver.
No. Oh, have you
I am.
coordinated with this? And he's got it ready. You sneaky people, you've done this behind my back. There's a promo. Go on, Matt, I'll put you on the big screen. Show the book again. So Matt's wife is an author and it's called The One I Love to Hate. And Nick, I always say to people, buy Matt's wife's books, the lovely Amanda's books, and I always describe them as smutty books. How smutty have you found it?
Right. So I am 40% in, and it has only been mildly smutty. So it would be like rated PG-13 for brief, mild moments of smuttiness.
Oh wow!
There is a flashback with some physical contact, if you will.
Okay. Well,
but I believe the whole book I'm about 40% through. I believe the whole book is building into, at the very end, in a climax, if you will, being rather incredibly smutty.
See, Matt, all these years I've been, I want to help you and Amanda sell these books so you can have a Ferrari and spend more time podcasting with me. But I have pretty much described them as hardcore porn, and it appears I'm mistaken.
You're entirely mistaken, unless the only reason you would buy the book is if it was, in which case you are entirely correct.
And it does also prove that I have never even come close to reading one of those books, or indeed any book, for quite a while now.
It's Schrodinger's smuttiness. It's as smutty as you want it to be until you open it.
Indeed. Yeah. So I'm curious. I've obviously read these books because I read them and as she's writing them, and then I read them.
And they're all based off of you. Yes,
you're the main male protagonist in all of it. So it's basically Matt Trumpet's fan fiction.
It's. I think it's more like what she wished I was, but I don't ever actually ask that question because I really don't want to know the answer.
Don't want to know.
But I'm curious. It is a romance. You're reading it. What has your impressions been? Do you like it? Is it, would you recommend it to other dudes to read?
Ooh, I don't know. Am I secure enough? So my wife goes through a lot of romance, and I am definitely recommending it to her, and I have been. But I have specifically asked her not to start reading it yet because she reads upwards of over 100 books per year, which is just an insane amount of reading for one person. Like that's like not even the 1%. That's like the little tail on the bell curve. But so I'm like, I need like a week and a half head start because she'll read the whole thing in one sitting so that we can talk about it. But yeah, I'm actually really enjoying it because I mean, just with everything that's going on in the world, all the news, like people WhatsApp messaging me links to tweets about another state is shutting down because in America, the way we do it is we shut down one state at a time because that makes sense. So it's really a nice escape from all the real life and all the things that I normally would be reading. And the dialogue in particular is quite sassy, if I do say so myself. And I've been reading it out loud to my dog, who may or may not be enjoying it.
Dakota.
Should I get a copy and should we use it to reopen What's It About podcast?
We shouldn't not do that.
I lost track. I think that means it's happening. The year-long Podfade is going to reanimate itself. And just so you know, like doing podcasts is technically challenging. There is a skill curve to doing it. If you're going to do it, please learn how to make it not really irritating. Obviously, this is a bad example, but most of the irritation is down to the host, and I can't do anything about me.
Right. So you've obviously listened to all of our episodes when we put those out because you support all your little podcast friends and all their endeavors.
Yes, I do. Test me on anything. Ask me any question about your podcast, and I'll answer it.
Name a book
that we did. Yeah.
And that's all the time we've got for you today. Follow Nick Alexander at Nick Alexander F1, Matt at MattPT55, me at Spanners Ready on Twitter, and you can be my Facebook friend. Search for Richard Reddy. Buy Matt's book called The
One I Love to Hate.
Remain Indoors. And I couldn't fit in Dakota's in the music because I forgot to ask where people can find you on the internet, but it's all right. We always end up going over the music anyway.
You can't find me on the internet, so if you want to get a hold of me, get a hold of Nick and he'll get a hold of me.
Wow, you're one of those. Are you one of the... You're like a hipster. You're like, I don't even own a TV. I knew someone who did that. They relished not having a TV downstairs, and they made this really big show of going, oh yeah, we don't have a television, you know, we'd like actually like each other's company, and like they would make you feel really bad about that.
Well, have you seen the show Portlandia?
No.
Oh, so there's a TV comedy sitcom thing called Portlandia, which is about life in Portland, where Dakota lives. And Portland is the most hipster city on earth, probably. And there, it's a point of pride. It's a contest. It's like, I don't even own a television. It's like, well, yeah, I haven't owned a television in 10 years. And it's like, oh yeah, I broke into my neighbor's house and unplugged their TV and took it to the dump so that I wouldn't live in a 3-block radius of a television. Like, and the sad thing is that that's where Dakota lives. It's like that there.
So it's a real thing. But tell you what, this couple did watch things on the internet. So they still like chimed in on TV series. And I'm like, but I thought you didn't watch stuff.
Of course they did, because people are hypocrites.
Hilariously, Nick told me that he was reading this book, and I'm like, oh, I should probably reread it in case we, have a serious discussion about it. So I sat down last night to reread the book, and this has nothing to do with actually reading books. And I said to my wife, I'm like, okay, the child has gone off to do her shower and whatnot. Pick whatever you want to watch, because I'm going to read all 388 of these pages right now. And so she picks some random romance movie with Anna Kendrick. She likes Anna Kendrick and Sam Rockwell, called Mr. Right. And it turns out that it was only a romantic movie attached to large amounts of gratuitous violence. It was about a hitman and gangs and everyone trying to assassinate and kill him. And I wound up not reading it all because I actually was fully invested in watching this movie. It's hilarious.
Oh, I'll watch that then, Mr. Right. Yes, I've seen that. It was on Netflix, and I just went, oh, that
it's
looks
on Netflix, and you can totally get the spousal buy-in because it's Anna Kendrick and Sam Rockwell.
Yeah, well, I'm not put off by Anna Kendrick in any way, shape, or form. So that's
is anyone?
No, I don't think so. I think that's why she's a really famous movie star. Yeah. I by the way, I think I've got the worst British hipster that I met and was at work. He was really like anti anything anyone else had, and his was not owning jeans. Like, he was really, really proud of not owning a single pair of jeans. Oh, I don't think I've even considered ever buying jeans. And he thought he was better than me because he didn't own jeans. And that got under my skin, that.
Well, in the before times, they were referred to as jeans, but now, with the current situation, everyone working from home and wearing sweatpants all the time, jeans are now henceforth to be referred to as hard pants.
Hard pants. Hard pants. Oh my gosh. Oh, that's not in the audio. We could call the video hard pants.
I was going to say,
but now we can't call them. Yeah, well, I mean, if it's not Mr. Poop, then I don't know what I'm going to call it.
It's got to be Mr. Poop, yeah.
Thank you for joining us on the live stream. We are doing this. Oh, you know what? I need to record this bit as well. I need to be. Oh no, I've got an ending. It's fine. Where I say where we're doing it. Monday, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. That's good. I'm
Day
trying.
1, 2, and 4.
I'm trying
really 2, 3,
hard.
and 6.
I'm trying really hard to keep Wednesdays just completely free. So because we do stuff on Saturdays and Sundays too. So I'm trying to keep Wednesdays like a day off. But it's not happening. It's just getting filled in. Turns out people need people who do this kind of thing, which is nice. So, maybe in a month or two we can eat food again. That'd be amazing. Guys, please leave us an iTunes review. Tell your friends that this is a good place to hang out, and we will see you next time. But above all, remain indoors. Outro made any... Oh no, I've just unmuted accidentally. Muted. Check this out. The spacebar unmutes. I didn't know the spacebar unmutes and mutes. So hang on. Spacebar again to mute. Bye. For reals this time. Bye.